We are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to ExJW-Live. We've got myself. We've got the usual Nash, and look who is here. In case that people don't know, we got a famous person in the house here. Yeah.
Celebrity.
Yeah, we have a celebrity. It does kind of feel like that, actually, Scott. It does. We're just this little YouTube channel and, X channel, I guess it is. And yeah, we actually, I kind of feel, kind of feel great that you've decided to come on our channel and have a chat with us for a little bit because you are so accomplished in what you've done. And so welcome, Scott.
Thank you so much, Greg and Nash. I really appreciate being, and I'm glad you guys invited me. You guys invited me on it was like the last day of our Kickstarter. You're like, come on tomorrow. And I was like so exhausted, but I really appreciate it. I'm glad we're making it happen.
Well, I have to apologize, like person to person, face to face, that we didn't really jump on that train. I didn't jump on that train soon enough, But you know what? I was thinking today, there's so many XJWs that are waking up all the time. And actually, Ron just popped in. Ron Pomo. Hey, Ron. And he's really really talks about this a lot, about how people are waking up all the time. So your documentary that you made, I mean, yeah, I watched it. I don't know how long ago, and I watched it again last night. But there's so many people waking up that are just seeing this documentary for the first time. So we should really be promoting this stuff all the time,
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like looking at the XGW community, and I didn't feel like I was part of that. I didn't even really know what was going on in the world in this identity space that we're in. But it's a constant wave of new people, and there's a constant wave of new YouTube channels and groups and Facebook groups and TikToks and Instagrams of people fired up with activism, or like they want to do something, they want to say something, they want to find their voice. And I feel like this film, Witness Underground, and all the other films that have come before and all the ones that are going to come next are sort of part of that. Part of like, let's embrace that wave and support each other. So like, this film is purely an XJW supported film. We crowdfunded the production of it, we crowdfunded the release of it. And I feel like everyone who's supported, I want to have you guys on my show. And it's any kind of collaboration is positive. And I want to give the new people who are like, hey, I want to do this thing, not be ashamed of being an XW, but like embrace it, because it's like actually a really powerful culture with a lot of good intentions to make positive change.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I've said that lots, that there's always new people coming out. So nothing, something that we already dealt with, whatever it is, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it seems like old news, it's brand new to someone just leaving. And so, I see new channels popping up all the time. Recently, I think I've had 3 different women pop up on my YouTube with fairly new channels. And, and they're punching out videos like one after another because they're excited about everything and they need an outlet to deal with the deprogramming of it all. So I think it's important to kind of always stay a little bit connected to it and not to brush off things that have already happened or act like that's old news. Because for literally millions of Jehovah's Witnesses, that's brand new to them. They've never heard it. And it just takes one thing to start chipping away at that foundation.
Yeah, even there was a great comment by Jonathan, Ex-Witness Awake. His channel, he said that like he reached out to some XJW, and that particular person that particular day just like slammed them for being a cult member and was super negative and like downer. And he stayed in the religion for like another 6 years or something because he was just like, whoa, that's like too much. And I think that just being like offering, kind of always looking back and like, hey, this is real, like, but being chill about it, or somehow offering advice, it can be like really deeply valuable to that person who's just starting to question.
Yeah. Well, that's what I really liked about your video, the movie. Sorry, the documentary.
Your aunt.
Yeah. Hey, Danelle.
Oh, hey, that's you.
Yeah.
Love it. It wasn't. It was really it was such a beautiful movie, and it wasn't a lot about bashing the witnesses. You know what I mean? And I actually really love the part where they talk about. I think it was Ryan who was talking about the stuff that he learned being a witness, right? The good things that it taught him. So I mean, just the overall feel of the film is really like it comes across like there's still some love and a lot of love for the people that are still in that organization. Maybe not the organization itself, but the people.
Yeah, I want to say about the film. I'm just going to get this out of the way because I love it because it's so different than everything else that's come out XJW related. We have a lot of documentaries. We have tons of coverage on CSA, of course, and it's a huge issue. It deserves it. And now we're getting more about shunning, it seems like. But music, I mean, for me, and I think most people feel, I mean, music is emotional, right? It ties us emotionally to, I mean, nothing can make a memory flood in like a song, whatever that memory might be. And so this film, it's talking about a time period where I was a teenager, and you guys too, I guess, really. And so that all the music in it kind of makes me remember those times in my life. And I really related to all the people's stories, right? You know how they were feeling, that kind of like confused, kind of depressed, kind of angry teenager. You don't really know why. But you have all this cult indoctrination that just keeps holding you onto you. And, for these folks, they got out relatively early. I stayed in until I went through the motions. I went and got married and then decided to have a bunch of kids and, try and do the whole Jehovah's Witness life. And then 36 years old, everything changes. So everybody's different, but it's, I think, we were talking about that earlier. That's what's important, is being able to relate to people's stories. And I related to so much of each person's story, even though we ended up on a different path.
Can I say something about this too? Just along with that is us XJWs. I think we find it hard to integrate into society, right? And I think everybody feels different to a certain extent, right? Everybody in the world, when they're in a group, they kind of feel a little different. But for us XJWs, I mean, I think it's a little bit more, and I think it's real. We really are kind of a little bit different. And that was so awesome about your film. And just like what Nash said, I was like, these are like my people. These are like these are my people, like the Ryan and the I'm not great with names, but all of them are like, these are like, it's just such kindred spirits to these people.
I love that. Yeah. I feel like my thing was I wanted to distance myself from the religion after leaving. Like, I was so proud of leaving. Like, this is a me decision, and got out, and then wanted to like completely like transform. Like, I'm now no longer associated with that thing. I'm traveling, I'm going to school, I'm doing all the things that were restricted by the culture. And like, you can't go to university. Traveling's kind of like, don't do it unless you're like a missionary, and don't waste any time. Don't try to focus on your career. Don't make any money. And I was like, I'm doing all that stuff because I was denying myself. And I wanted to never talk about this topic again, but it kept on popping up in my life in the most frustrating ways. Like, anything that reminded me of it was annoying and frustrating, or like triggering and traumatic. And eventually I was like, I need to get away from this. So I took a crazy dramatic trip where I was like, I wanted to always live abroad. I traveled a bunch, and as a witness, and I wanted to travel or live abroad properly, like slow travel, or like establish myself and get a job. So an opportunity came up to teach English, and I was like, that's easy. I could probably do that. So I went to Asia. And the thing that was amazing about Vietnam was that there was a steep learning curve, but I actually really liked interacting with kids. They're like 6 to 12-year-olds, like pure joy, like unfiltered fun, and energy. And that was great. But the amazing thing about living in Vietnam was that it's not just a communist nation, it's a Taoist culture, and they don't have the concept of God. Like they reject outright. Like there are no churches. It was like it was like a reef, so refreshing to walk outside and never see a religious anything, and to know that everyone thinks that there is no God, or they don't think about it at all, because there is, like in their mind, that's not even part of the reality worldview. And I think Jehovah's Witnesses are, yeah,
from where you came from. Yeah,
I feel like Jehovah's Witnesses are like a atheist factory, and of course, not everyone becomes atheist when they leave, but it's like you taught on a weekly basis to like look at every religion and find all their flaws and why they're wrong about a holy book, why they're wrong about the concept, how they're not worshiping God, they're worshiping a false God. And so like I'm atheist to the Catholic God. I have been atheist my whole life to the Protestant or Pentecostal God, etc. Like the way the Jehovah's Witnesses frame it is like they're all false gods. And of course, anything Hindu or Buddhist is false.
Double false.
Yeah, so false. So like landing in a place like that was like so refreshing, and it was like a nice clean slate to like free form new ideas. I forget how I got onto this this deep dive, but yeah, just like I needed the space before I ever looked at ex-Jehovah's Witness stuff on the internet, and that experience gave me the space to kind of think about what I wanted to do with film. And I brought a camera and audio equipment there, and I like learned on working on docs and short films there. I got back into it because I'd done it a lot in high school, and I'd gone to photography school when I was a witness. But I was like, I'd like left the religion at 19, but then kind of came back a little bit and went to school for photography. You're not really supposed to go to school at all, and definitely not for art. So I did this weird thing, but I always had this like a little bit of through line with film. And when I was in Vietnam, I was like, I need to tell this deeper, heavier story, but I don't really have the skills to do it. So that's how I kind of started. That's where like the freedom to think about how to tell a new kind of story sort of started percolating in my head over the years. And then I looked at the Jehovah's Witnesses for the first time, or ex-JWs for the first time, like 8 years after leaving their religion. And I was like, I'm going to do a shunning thing because I'm affected by shunning.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, you know what? Like, so basically for this stream, I think we're gonna talk about two topics, which is the film, which has been out for a while, and you, Scott. One thing I was noticing about the Patreon page, and it doesn't really have a lot about you, and even in the film, I don't know. Do you have credits in the film? Does it come up? I must have missed that.
Well, I'm in the opening credits as the writer director, I think, and then also as a second editor, because I did a lot of the editing. Yeah. But basically, it's if you look at it there, it basically says I did everything in like the most important roles, but then there's like
so that's why there's no credits, because it would be your name every second.
Yeah, I tried to chill out on just taking every single role, but there's a lot of people that really help make the film possible. And if you look at the credits of any movie, like every good movie needs to have like at least 20 people that are doing something important, because it's a huge project. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so what I'm getting at is, I don't know, maybe people out there that are listening that know they know a lot about you, but I don't. Can we get the short or long rundown, whatever you want to do? Like, start from day one. Well, you were born, and then what?
The Mars was no.
Yeah,
I think of my astrological position on the. Born in northern Wisconsin to a mixed Baptist Lutheran family who didn't really do church stuff. That's too much information. My grandparents joined the religion. That's kind of the unique thing, like in their retirement, and they were off traveling. Like had like early retirement in their mid 50s.
Was that in the 70s or 80s?
That was, they were starting their retirement in the 70s, and during their retirement, they're kind of, I don't know if you know couch surfing culture that kind of popped up in the 2000s. It's like an early internet community thing. You can like travel and stay with people who live in wherever you're traveling for free. It's like a cultural exchange. Mm-hmm. I feel like Jehovah's Witnesses sort of offered those features. Like you can have instant community, instant friends, instant positive experiences, a safe place to land anywhere on the planet if you're an active person. And in the religion. And that's really appealing. That's like a really cool what's the word? Humanist thing that they offer, as long as you're like in good standing. But of course, then they do the love bombing thing to anyone new who's like even shows a tiny bit of interest. Like I think my grandparents like were drawn to that. So that they were influenced by that. And then they would travel to visit our family. But, you know, as a kid, it's like, these people are important. My parents telling us about our grandparents, like, you should hang out with them. And they're like, to me, you know, 50-year-old, like ancient humans. Like, who are they? But then they started influencing my dad and his brother to join the religion, which my dad started going and my mom was resistant. So I kind of, if you like break it down, I kind of grew up in a mixed household of like someone trying to be good at the religion and someone who like kind of hated it and my mom had her own beliefs. And so if you like are really distilling it, it's like a mixed household, two different faiths, or not faith, non-faith. And in terms of what we were able to do, tons of leniency from both of my parents, because my dad was new in the religion, he grew up with a relatively normal near Canadian experience. I always tell people I'm from near Canada because I'm northern Wisconsin has, like, I grew up with hockey and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And snow.
It's our culture.
Minnesota North Stars.
Yeah, exactly. So that influence was more balanced, and I think I had a good, like, healthier balance. I had a Jehovah's Witness light experience. Low carbs.
Yeah. I had the heavy experience, the meat and potatoes, third, fourth generation experience. Same with Nash, I think.
A lot of fatty meats.
Wow.
Yeah. Not very light at all.
You guys are in Calgary, or you're in?
I'm in Calgary, yeah.
I'm near Edmonton.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I grew up in southern British Columbia, so in BC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where I had most of my JW experience. Actually, no, well, now it's about half and half, Alberta and BC. Anyway, Canada. Canada is boring. The U.S. is cool. Hey, all the cool stuff happens in the U.S.
BC is pretty attractive.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think my teenage years, if you want to get back to my story, I had I basically physically in, mentally out life, a PMO life, basically like questioning everything from the day I'm taught it and hear it. Like, that doesn't make sense. They're totally missing this entire other aspect of biology when they're talking about history. Like, why are they skipping that? Like, I would question that during the Watchtower readings and the church sessions, like live. Like, this is nonsense. Like, I have biology class. I'm not an idiot. I've been reading encyclopedias forever.
I need to ask you a question here. Yeah. Why is it that you were like, I've read biographies of people that kind of grew up in a religious family, but at like 15 or 16 or 17 realized it was bullshit, right? Yeah. But I never did. I was like hook, line, and sinker. Do you think it was, okay, look, are you just smarter than me? Or is it... I think it's more complicated than that, but you know, maybe. Or is it the family? Like, because your dad was not, or sorry, your mom was not much of a believer. So did that give you kind of the allow yourself to kind of think like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to a matter of what information you're allowed to access. So a lot of witnesses filter a lot of information. The kids never can watch movies, this kind of topic. They'll take them out of high school. They'll put them in homeschool and cater their educations that they, you know, that's common. That's not a rare thing in that culture. But like with my family, like my examples were like, oh, you don't have to really believe all the stuff. And it's like, well, witnesses say you do. But my dad's like, oh no, you don't really need to like go to church.
Wow.
Which part do I have to filter out? And he's like, well, it's just you and God in the kingdom. Well, that's pretty general Christianity if you break it down. But I like had some moments of like, I don't know, like there's a term I might be mixing it up, but it's like the dark hour of the soul where you're like questioning, do I really believe any of this?
Dark
what's
night
real,
of the soul.
What's not? Yeah, the dark night. And I brought that up to my dad, and we had, like, when I was 19, I kind of took a break from the religion. I went on like a skateboarding 6-week travel to the West Coast to hit up all the 3 American skate parks, because in the 90s there were only like 5. They went to the West Coast skate parks in Portland, Seattle, and LA, and went surfing and did all this fun stuff with my high school buddies, because like I basically only had because there weren't really many around. But anyway, I kind of left the religion and kind of stopped going, but I still kind of believe some of it. But I was like, it's like a topic that's really frustrating. And my teenagers were always like trying to toe the line, but like in both worlds, like trying to be cool, but also, and do what I love, but also following the premier tenets, like unfortunately don't have any intimacy with anyone line, which is so frustrating. Anyway, so like I had this break and I went back to my dad. I'm like, I don't really believe a lot of this. I think shunning is a form of hatred, and it's not healthy, and we shouldn't be doing that to people. And this and this and this and that. I don't believe this thing. I think they're wrong about how ancient history is told. Like there's a lot of gaps, and like I feel like we're in a conspiracy theory cult, and I don't believe that we should have to do so many mental gymnastics to believe all this stuff. And basically he gave me that line of like, it's just you, God, and the kingdom. Like get into paradise. Jehovah's Witnesses are the only ones who know how to get there, and everyone else is wrong and they're going to die. Like, okay, I'm skeptical about that.
That didn't win you over.
And then he's basically like, if you start preaching full time, like Ox Pioneering, I'll give you half price rent. And I was like,
what? Wow.
So if I work 50 hours a week for free for a weird cult, then I get to save $125 because rent's $250. Like that sounds like a great deal, Dad. Wage. Let's do it. I should have gotten a part-time job.
Yeah.
Would have been 50 hours.
Did you do it, or you didn't do it? No,
I did it.
You did?
I did it.
Oh, wow,
I was Ox Pioneering on the regular, and our entire elder body was wiped out by the district overseer or whatever.
Oh yeah,
traveling
really
guy. And he appointed guys from the nearby like child sex ring famous congregation, and a liberal congregation. So they would drive like an hour away to like serve the congregation in Antigo, Wisconsin. And they were like, you cannot be an Ox Pioneer. And I'm like, well, I'm going to put in the hours and you can do what you want with those hours. But since you're being dicks about it, I'm not going to report. You don't get to say like your congregation has high hour output. I'm going to put in 50 hours, but I'm not going to report it. And they're like, you have to report. I was like, no, you can't have it both ways. I was like,
who was right in the end?
Yeah.
Why were they saying you couldn't be an auxiliary pioneer? Can you say that? Do you want to talk about that, or?
Oh, I mean, I was like, I don't believe this.
That'll do it.
I don't believe this is the real religion. Basically,
you're an auxiliary pioneer for cheap rent, but you don't believe any of it. But you're going around.
You're not reporting your time. I like this. It's a good story.
Like is it the ultimate cognitive dissonance, or maybe not?
Right? Yeah. No, I think so. I think it was like deep cognitive dissonance. Like I was not in a healthy place.
How old were you when your dad like started being a witness?
I think he started going when I was 6.
6? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just wonder, like I always, and you guys were talking about it, I think that's interesting about how some people seem to like figure it out young and some don't. And I did lots of reading on that the 414 window or whatever they talk about in Christianity. Like that's when you get kids to believe in their Lord and Savior. And Jehovah's Witnesses are the same, except it's not just your Lord and Savior. It's, follow the Watchtower.
I think it comes the 414.
Yeah,
what is that?
414 is kind of that's when they're, because that's the most formative years. That's when they
from age 4 to 14.
Age 4 to age 14. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's when they want to get you in, because those beliefs will hang on. I mean, we see it all the time in our community. There's people struggling late in life because of those those things that were indoctrinated in them when they were young.
Well, I remember the indoctrination program. It started with the cassette tapes. Like guys put on headphones before bed and listen to like a monotonous voice telling
great teacher,
following along with the great teacher, reading the paragraph, and then there's a question, and it's like, well, sentence 3 is always the answer, and like pause it on your cassette tape, and then look for the answer and make sure it's the answer, and say it out loud, and then go into the next paragraph and push play again. It's like, this is before bed, so like this is some disgusting, clear indoctrination.
And there was
straight from the CIA.
There was some weird shit in there too in that book.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like regular little childhood stuff. I remember my parents had me read it when I was like, I don't know, I would have been 4 or 5. I couldn't read yet, but I listened to those tapes so much, I could follow along in the book and read it basically, like without hearing it. I'd listened to it so many friggin' times that
Really?
I could read this goddamn indoctrination book. So yeah. So going back to what I was saying, I think in those years too, I think it's important, like who your role models are, right? Jehovah's Witnesses know that too. That's why they always that's why they cut out worldly family, and they love bomb you with elders and older ones in the congregation, and because they're trying to set you up with, these are the people you look up to, right? Because a friend of mine, his mom's super witness, and we grew up together. He was actually my best man at my first wedding, and he never got baptized, and he left, and he kind of always knew he didn't want to be a witness. But his mom was super Jehovah's Witness. His dad was like a witness, but had problems. But he had lots of worldly family too, and he kind of looked up to them, like successful business people and nice people, and it was like, that's kind of, he always saw the witnesses as kind of weird, and he kind of pulled back and looked. They are weird, and he looked up to other people, right? And he made a great life for himself. He's super successful, real proud of the guy, and it's funny because like I look at my situation, and lots like me, like my only family I knew growing up was my nuclear family, like just my family. We didn't know our extended family because they weren't witnesses, and the congregation was our family, and that was it. And so it's almost like it just shuts off that part of your brain where there is something else, and you have all the answers.
That's really interesting, because I had a totally opposite experience where my mom and basically her side of the family lived in our hometown, and my dad's side, who was joining the religion one after the next, they lived in all different parts of the country and far away. So I was really close to my mom's side of the family, and they had a lot of cousins. So we were with them every week, my whole life, and they went to different churches, and I would meet their church friends, and we would hear about their different beliefs. And my dad would have like ongoing debates with like the brother of our uncle through marriage, and in the house, like Catholic versus Jehovah's Witnesses fight. And that would be like an interesting thing happening in the yard once every 6 months or something. It's like, what are they talking? They're like so intense about this. And my uncles and his brother are like, so like, they're so convincing, or like they're just as like proud and
just as convinced of their own belief as the other guy. Yeah.
And my cousins were like trying out different churches, and they had different friends from school who were inviting them to different churches. So like, and then some people weren't into church at all, and that was totally fine, and everyone got along. So we were like a interfaith, like big family, and like we were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they accepted us. So like that all sort of kind of influenced me in a big way, I think. And like my grandmother
helped you like in your filmmaking career, you know, you're kind of in the religion, but you can also maybe see it from the outside as well. I don't know. Does that make any sense? Do you think that helped you?
I think so in a big way. And I tried to make sure that the people that I worked with on the film, like I invited publicly, like any ex-witnesses who are out there who are into this thing or think that they can help tell the story, like come join, help make this. But in the end, that didn't really work out. And I kind of made the decision to work with people who were, one was never religious, like grew up atheist, and another that was the producer on the film, and then the editor who grew up in England and never had any association with this particular religion. So she was kind of learning about it as she went, which I kind of went that way because I felt that they could make the film appeal to a broader audience. It's like 1 in 1,000 people in the Christian West, if I can say that, like the places where Catholicism is established and Protestantism is established, has association with the Jehovah's Witnesses, so like have an obvious interest in the topic. But I would like to make the film appealing to the 999 people who have no idea, and I had all these like bullet points important points I wanted to make. One is like shunning's important, and the path out of religion, like whether that's atheism or to some other belief system or your own personal worldview, free thought, like the path to their independent way of seeing the world and making your own conclusions, and that it would be a beacon for ex-JWs. Like this is something that we see ourselves in and feel good about, and not like sad and re-traumatized for. I mean, sure.
I think you were successful in that. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I did not feel sad after watching that. There's a lot of sad stuff. Don't get me wrong.
There's parts that really hit you, but I think that's important,
rough,
right? Those are the parts where you really feel it and you feel for the people, but you also get to see that's not the end. Like, that's not the end of your story. You don't have to be the sad, broken individual for the rest of your life. You get to be, who you want to be.
Yep. Okay, let me step in here. I'm going to interrupt everybody. Okay, so we're 19 years old. We're on this really cool, awesome skateboarding trip. That we are exploring the West Coast. And what next? So let's pick up there.
Formative thing happened on that trip. Two formative things happened in that. It was like 5-6 weeks.
What was their name?
Those guys.
Oh, I'm kidding.
I wish I could pull out a name right then, but Tim and
there
Dave.
Is someone.
Dolores.
We'll call her Dolores.
Now, my old high school buddies. One of them, his brother in college had made a friend who was living in Pasadena, and for us, Pasadena is like exotic, far away. Like the Beach Boys talk about this place, like that's not a real place; it's mythical. So. We went to Pasadena. We were crashing with this friend of the brother of one of the guys, and he's like, "Come to church." And those guys were a Lutheran and a Pentecostal, and these are like my high school closest friends. For me, they're like my closest buddies. And so I was like, "Well, I haven't gone to church in a long time. I kind of don't believe it." Everyone who I ever met in the Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm 19. Everyone who I've met in the religion I didn't even tell you this part, but I did meet a bunch of other witnesses when I was like 17, 18, who were like musicians and skateboarders and snowboarders and like doing all the things I love to do. And so we started hanging out. And then like, as soon as they got out of their parents' house, they all left the religion. There's like 16 like teens that all left the religion. And I was like, how am I the only guy that's still in the religion from like northern Wisconsin that I knew I was like, I mean, there's a few, but like, I was like, I'm the least likely person to stay in this religion. I basically don't believe it. My friends are atheists and from every other faith possible. And so I'm with these guys, and I was like, well, I think I should go try it out. Like, what's the harm if I'm part of the true religion? What's the harm in going to church? And I went to this church, and I was like, I mean, it was like youthful. It was vibrant. They were teaching something interesting it was way more interesting than a Jehovah's Witness experience in a church, in the religion, in the meetings. And there was a snack bar and people were hanging out and they're like, "Hey, do you guys want to go surfing?" And I was like, this is church. I didn't know you could actually have a good
at the
time.
JWs is the stuff you can't eat once a year.
Yeah.
A snack bar.
Yeah, it was like cookies and coffee and people were friendly. And then someone's like, "Hey, I heard that you like grew up in this Jehovah's Witness thing." Like, "Oh yeah." Like, "Are you still like, do you believe it?" Like, I don't know. And he gave me this like brochure, just like Jehovah's Witnesses give people. And I was like, I can't refuse a brochure. I've been giving this garbage out to people my whole life. I have to take it. And I spent the next day or that whole afternoon, like reading it. And it was like people that were shunned, elders and whole families that were like cut off from everyone they ever knew. Basically our experience now.
Yeah.
And that really affected me. That was information I brought back to my dad. So like that was shocking to see, like, oh, people are like, they have a voice, but it's like, it's coming from the weirdest place. Like, I didn't expect to go to church and have them have prepared information about how my family chose a cult to grow up in. And these are exactly the points of what makes a cult. And shunning is one of those things. And behavior control, social control, information control. Like, I'm not allowed to hear that kind of information. I knew it was real. Another thing that I did that's totally crazy, I think, and what made me want to make a movie was that as a teen, I was actively looking on the internet for movies about Jehovah's Witnesses. I was like, Jehovah's Witnesses are making movies, but they feel a little bit like propaganda. What are other people saying about this religion? I went and found all these movies. To Verdener out of Denmark, I think is what it's called, is like a narrative about shunning, about how a young girl has a boyfriend in the congregation, a young teenage woman, and she loves him, and they end up doing something intimate, and she gets kicked out, disfellowshipped. And it's like, well, how her dad treats her as an elder. And I was like, that's exactly what happens. I've seen that. that's so true and honest. And like 6 films like that. I was finding these movies and I was like, well, maybe there's Jehovah's Witnesses out there. Like another point I wanted to hit with this film was like, I want Jehovah's Witnesses to be able to watch it and feel like it's accurate and not sensational or not like pointing a finger at like doctrine or reading the Watchtower and like showing hypocrisy, but like just what is the real life experience? But yeah, so that anyway, 19. I read some apostate literature. Believe it or not, they were really.
Were Jehovah's Witnesses actually mentioned in this brochure?
Yeah. It was like these are elders and former pioneers and former elders' wives. That's a position in the religion, right? You get to achieve elders' wives.
Yeah.
Yes,
it is
lucky
place for a woman to land.
I remember when I was out preaching one time, and somebody at the door brought out a book, and it was like I don't know, like an inch thick, great big book, and it was titled like "How to Deal with Jehovah's Witnesses" at the door. And I'll never forget it. Like it was just the whole book, like just was arguments against our arguments and stories about Jehovah's Witnesses, but it didn't hit anything. I mean, I was probably 21 at the time, and I was just like, whatever. That's Satan.
That's Satan.
Let's move you over here.
That's an interesting point. There's every once in a while there was someone at the door who would be like, I'm going to give you some time because you need to hear this. And like that person that gave you that book or showed you that book was like well-meaning, right? They're like, hey, you're a part of something that's not healthy. And like, I'm going to show you, I have a whole like tool set here on how to deal with your cult programming. But someone, like I had a few people that were like notable moments are like, hey, you're part of something dangerous. You should do research on the internet about it. You're in a cult or like, have you ever thought about how do you prove that your God exists without the Bible? Like ask a question that gets my wheels turning that like I'll never forget, you know? And there's like 6 different people that did that. They're like, you're preaching to me, but it sounds like they're not your own ideas. Like, what are your ideas? Like, what do you believe? Let's say some other thing that the church has taught me to repeat. And they're like, that's also not your idea. I want to know what you actually believe. And I'm like, well, I believe what I'm told. Oh, shit. What do I believe? I don't actually know.
Yeah. Have times where people that question when you were growing up, maybe in school or something, where and you said there was, I remember just one beliefs that wasn't, what was it? It was one of our teachers, and she was, they're always cool and artistic. One time we were doing something in drama. Yes. We were saying something, and teacher had a problem with it. Religion. I remember that. So I don't know, maybe she was worried that she would get, but we always have in our life.
You're freezing up real bad, Greg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, is that just on my end, or
technical?
Do you see that?
Too.
Now Scott also looks frozen.
I just had to change networks. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, there he is. Anyway, I was giving Greg's internet is.
Oh yeah,
that was ExJW Caleb.
It's doing a Mexican internet thing. Calgary.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Is everybody? Am I back?
You're kind of back.
You're still kind of cutting out. Your audio comes through, but it's a bit delayed here and there.
I heard a part of a story about a school teacher. I think you had a big crush on her. I don't know if you dated her. I didn't hear
Hot for Teacher. I heard Hot for Teacher from
Hot for Teacher. Yeah, it's his favorite song.
Halo.
He learned to play it on guitar and harpsichord when he was 14. No. Oh, you're froze, Greg. Sorry, buddy. You're out.
Since we did a funny segue to music.
Well,
yeah. Let's go to there. Let's go to there. When did music become a thing for you?
You want it to be about my story? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nirvana's Nevermind album, like everyone in the 90s.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah.
I bought like I'd like Columbia House like CD collection. I was growing. My dad had like a huge record collection from his.
Are you still? Do they still send you collections letters?
No, but I did only pay a penny, and I got all their offer, their initial offer. But yeah, I was like reading paragraphs and little like 3-sentence blurbs about an album, being like, that's my kind of music, and then buying an album in the mail. It's kind of a funny way to like experience music, right? Like now you listen to the entire collection of artists and you eventually still never pay them. And you pirate it. But back then you'd buy a CD and for 10 or 20 bucks. And I got that album and the Blue album by Weezer. And then I was like, playing saxophone in the high school band is not for me. I need a guitar immediately. And I mowed a bunch of lawns. I got a guitar.
I played saxophone in the high school band.
Oh, nice. Cool. What chair were you? I was second, I think, or third.
Last chair. Definitely last.
I was so bored. I thought it was cool, but I was so bored because it's like saxophone when you're in middle school is like beat like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, what are we doing here? Why?
Yeah, agreed.
So I got excited about playing guitar. And then that changed everything. My older brother had a drum set. My little brother started playing drums. So like I always had someone to play with. And then my parents bought land when our neighbor died with a house on it. And that became our music studio. And then eventually like our high school friends like met friends that play music. And they eventually like they filled this neighbor's house, our second, it was like a trailer house in the forest. They filled this house with instruments and we had access to every instrument possible. Tube organ, drum set, bass amps, guitars, guitar amps, all the effects, microphones, and I bought a PA system, and we were throwing like parties and shows and multiple, like every week there was something for all through like the last year of high school and a little bit after.
It
was awesome. Yeah. So that really formed my love for music and my understanding of music and why I wanted to do more with music. And everything I've made basically in the last bunch of years has been something around music and art. So I kind of gave up on music because I realized like it takes a lot of dedication. You know, like everything's a problem in life.
You got to choose film or music, I think maybe. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. I chose one, and I was like, I care a lot more about visual arts. I'd always done like photography and film stuff. So, but working with musicians enhances that a lot.
I'm really interested. If I'm back, am I back? Am I here?
You're back.
People hear me? Yeah, good.
You're even clear. Your camera's better.
Really? Well, I can't go out and come back in because it'll shut the whole thing down. So, okay, Scott, how did you tell us about your journey with film?
Yeah, so our high school in Wisconsin used to be like the most well-funded state for when it comes to arts. I think it's because we've had a Republican governor for the last 3 terms. It's been gutted completely, and it's the 50th state in education for arts. But at the time in the 90s, we were able to do this in the 90s for our classes. We could do remote classes with video and learn languages from other programs and university programs in the high school. And we also had a cable access TV studio where we would broadcast what we created. And we had a documentary course that had like the latest cameras. I mean, now they're obviously like very 90s, but at the time, it was really good. At the time, we had like an amazing editing bay, and we could broadcast. And we did like live news, and my brother started a channel it was like just a standard news and weather channel, but it was like a comedy news and weather channel. And so he got into that. So we were both into cameras and film, and all of our skateboarding buddies were like, this is amazing. We can make our own skateboarding videos, like all of our skateboard heroes and snowboarding videos. And it was kind of like, there's no limits. And if you are in that class, you can cut out of any other class to go make a movie. So that was an incredible opportunity. And a lot of the people in that class, they still are working in video and film and TV because we had so much freedom. So that was sort of like this amazing gift that we didn't even know how important that would be for the rest of our lives at the time. And we went to Europe with like our German class, and made like a German travelogue today it would be something that could if you could put YouTube in the 90s, it would have been something that would landed on YouTube at the time. It's like a travelogue traveling Central Europe. And for people with their first, fresh eyes in another country. So we were doing that kind of stuff. And then I was struggling financially when I moved to Minneapolis. There's a whole connection to why I went to Minneapolis and the music scene that's in the movie. But I went to photography school. And that was a really great experience because I would have this like 6-month oscillation where I would like, I want to learn photography, and I would just do it and like develop film. And we had a dark room and developing my own stuff. But then I would take a 6-month where I was like, it's a hobby I put on the shelf. But I kind of never really learned like deep fundamentals of light and aperture and shutter speed and ISO and like it's basic stuff to me now. But I needed to go to school to really get it. Even though I had always had a film camera, and then I eventually got digital cameras, and I was really working on it for every other 6 months, basically. And I went to school, like really solidified that stuff. And then when I went to Vietnam, eventually, like I kind of touched on this earlier in the story. When I went to Vietnam, I was like, I'm gonna get myself a proper camera. And I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna shoot. There's just got to be stories to tell there. And it was a weird thing to do because I was like, it was like a self-taught, self-led documentary program. And I met a film director from Paris. And he and I became friends, and he brought me on to a lot of shoots, and I worked for free on a lot of things. And then eventually I started getting paid gigs. I made like 70, 80 like live music performance videos for artists I met there at venues. And then I was like, I should keep working with these people and do something bigger. So I made a movie that was like a prototype that it's called Hanoi Mixtape, HanoiMixtape.com. And it's like a 45-minute like celebration of music and art.
Sorry, Greg.
You cut out.
I said this is all taking place in Vietnam?
That music. I was there for 5 years. So I did all that music film stuff in Vietnam.
Nice. Good morning, Vietnam.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's sort of, I don't know if you know the culture of Berlin. Berlin is like film, media, music. And it's like for me, it's like a cultural powerhouse of Europe, maybe London and Berlin. And Hanoi kind of, it's not really that, but if you're there, it's so international, but it's like all of America's enemies. It's like have an embassy there. Anyone who's ever been a dictatorship or a communist country or a socialist country, or fought against the United States in any situation, they have an embassy there. So it was like, oh my God, I'm meeting people I've never met before. Yeah. Yeah. And there's like, you go to a cafe, like a vegan cafe, and there's like a huge picture of Fidel Castro on the wall. And it's like, yeah, anyone who's ever like talked about launching missiles at US. So that was also like a nice refresher because like, I don't know, there's something punk rock about Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a weird sentence. In that they're like, we're anti-establishment, we're anti-government. Right. That I was like, that's a cool thing. I like that. All the punk rock I'm listening to, all my heroes in music are kind of saying that that's the right path. Be independent. And the United States isn't just a country; it's an empire. And they're not doing nice things in a lot of places. They're doing some pretty evil stuff in a lot of places. And there's constant multi-front conflicts and wars. And so, like to go get to know the enemy a little bit was really interesting. And they're so proud of kicking the United States ass. Like they'll let you know all the time. They're like, yeah, you guys are losers.
We ran you out of here.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, that's funny. What made you come back?
2 things. One was I'd started the ExJW Coming Out series on a YouTube channel, and I made the Hanoi Mixtape film. I'd shot it and like presented it in like a 10-day challenge at the venue. And then, so that was like wrapping up. I already knew I was coming back, but I was like, that felt like I completed my education. Like it was like my 5-year university. And I had already started doing the ExJW Coming Out series there with the Vietnamese ex-Jehovah's Witness. And I'd shot something in Munich when I was visiting family. I have family in Munich. And he was an ex-witness from Chicago who had settled in Germany because he has there's no family or support system, and the health system in the US is terrible. So like Germany has like a great social system. So like he landed there, and his story is really interesting. So I was like shooting that and like, wow, this topic is really getting really interesting and deep, and I love it. And I want to make something bigger. I'm thinking about crowdfunding a movie, and I started working with the witnesses in the movie, Eric and Cindy Elvendahl, who are featured, and their music's featured, and their band is featured. I was already working with them for the project. And I had this idea that I could work with them kind of in the back of my head. It wasn't so clear as like the movie is today, obviously, a solid thing. It was like a fuzzy idea that like I could keep working on this in USA and maybe crowdfund a movie. And I had some engineering work because after getting out of the religion, I went back to school again for engineering, and I'd kept that going in Vietnam on like some small side gigs and like, and what do you call it? Like I was a contractor for some small engineering projects while I was there, and I would come back to the States like for 1 or 2 months a year while I was there to work. And then that started to become something like, they're like, hey, could you come back for another project? And I was like, okay, so there's money and like a film project, like a creative passion project, and they're both in the States. So that's what brought me back, was this film.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's been 7 years. That's crazy to me. Like,
wow.
In the Americas for 7 years. Yeah.
When did you start? Like, when did you get the idea for this film? Like, how did you find out about with Nuclear Gopher and all of that? Like, tell us about how that all came to be.
That's a really interesting point that changed my entire adult life. So if we go back to the story where I'm on the West Coast and I go to church and I'm with my skateboarding buddies and surfing in California, we came back to Madison and I was like, guys, I will figure out my life. You can go back to our hometown. It's like 3 hours north in Antigo, Wisconsin, Wausau area. I'm like, but leave me in Madison. I'll figure something out. And they just dropped me at a friend's apartment from our home area. And I was like, hey, can I crash here? And they're like, yeah. So I figured it out, and I got a cafe job, and I was skateboarding to work every day. I'd had my West Coast life. I was like, okay, now I'm going to be a college kind of kid. In that time, I lived there. That was like a 6-month break from being in my home area, and I was living with a bunch of women, which is one was an ex-witness, and the others were just college women, and that was really interesting because I was like, this is totally normal. I can have female roommates and it's totally fine. What are witnesses all upset about and obsessed with sex and intimacy?
Men can't control themselves around them. It's just the devil. He gets you.
And then at some point I was like, I kind of had this weird, my dad was like emailing me and he's like, have you gone to church? Basically gone to meetings. And I was like, no, I'm taking, I'd read that apostate literature. And so I was rethinking my life. And he's like, maybe you should go. And then I hit up another ex-witness who, I mean, we all just left the religion, right? We're 19, 20 years old. We all just left, but like two had lived in Madison. So I was like, hey, what's up, buddy? And he's still a friend of mine to this day. And he's like, I was like, do you go to meetings? And he's like, oh yeah. I was like, do you want to go? He's like, sure. So we went, and no one there knew who he was. And I was like, dude, well, you don't lie to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's obvious you don't do this.
I don't want to out myself here.
He only went because he wanted to maintain our friendship or something. So he's like, yeah, I'm totally an awesome Jehovah's Witness like you. And I'm like, I don't go. What are we doing? I just was bringing up the topic. My dad was kind of influencing that. So we went, but then we're in Madison. So it's like the big city for us. It's 200,000 people there. And it's a tiny little town, college town. And there's like, I don't know, probably 4 congregations or something. And I didn't know anyone there. And these 2 people were like, hey, you guys want to get a drink after this? And I was like, okay, so we're 21 at this point. Or how did we go to a bar? I think it was year 2000. So it was no drinking, but we went out somehow. And we just must have got like a soda at a bar or something. We were at a bar. And they were like super cool, listening to great music. We talked about music the whole night. And this other ex-witness was also in a band. Like I had shot his album photos in like 1999 with all of his he was another witness who was in a worldly band, and I had helped them make their album. So for me, this is all just like, that's just normal stuff. It wasn't like we were crossing boundaries. And it's also weird, right? Like no one understands how this works. But so we were with these other 2 witnesses who were also like into music, and they knew all these people in Minneapolis who made music. And so they were name dropping this, and they were super cool. And I was like, oh, I actually like them. This sucks. And I was really attracted to her. I was like, every part of my soul is like, don't do it. Don't go to church. Don't go to meetings. Don't be a witness. It sucks. And then I'm like, but I really like these people. And they became really cool. And I was really attracted to her. And she's like, I'm going to become a what do you call it if you go be a missionary properly? A Gilead. She wants to go to Gilead school.
Oh, Gilead. Oh, yeah, that's what it was back then.
I'm going to join Gilead and become a missionary and be sent away to like do God's true people's true work in the last days. And it's like,
Jesus Christ.
I guess there's something inspiring about that. Do I care about that? Like, it's an adventure. They do offer. That's the only interesting thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is like they're like sending you off on an adventure.
Yeah.
And I liked something about that. I was attracted to international life and travel as a teen, and I felt like it was impossible to do so. I wanted to see the world. So I liked that she was driven for that. And she was connected to Nuclear Gopher. And so I started hanging out with them, and I started like trying to date her. And I started, okay, I'm going to get back into the religion. And that's when I like ended up going back to my hometown. And then I would travel to see her and this group of people in Madison who were in music. And through that, Weezer had a new, like a third album. The Green Album came out, and they were doing their first tour after like an 8-year hiatus after the Pinkerton album, which was amazing. And everyone was so excited about that at this time period. So I went and stayed at her place because we were becoming good friends and things were starting to happen there. And all these Minneapolis witnesses were migrating down and crashing in Madison with the cool Madison Witnesses, this family and other friends, and then migrating the next day to the Weezer concert. So I was part of this thing, and I met all these Nuclear Gopher kids. Eric, I was like on the floor. I can't remember who was playing guitar. I think I was playing "Say It Ain't So" by Weezer the night before the concert, and he was helping me sing like ballad style for "Say It Ain't So." And then we became friends.
It ain't so. Somebody had to do
one right for it.
I can't help it.
That's the inception of this whole thing. So, like, if I had never gone to that meeting and met them, this film wouldn't exist, and I would have saved my 20s. But instead, I did weird JW stuff for the next 7 years, and
well.
It took me. I infiltrated a surf community in Ecuador of all witnesses. That was interesting. That's another story. I went on like self-guided need greater missionary experience.
Oh yeah.
You have to become established in your congregation for like 2 years, and then you can apply to go. And I was like, I can buy a plane ticket in like 10 seconds. I bought a plane ticket, and they're like, you can't just go and be need greater. And I was like, I'm gonna do it. Watch me. So
I've already auxiliary pioneered and not even declared the hours. So
right, yeah. I'm like a rogue witness. I'm off
I'm off the charts. Me of the Apostle Paul, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Hardcore. Okay, so you met these people. You spent like a bunch of time with them, and then like when did the movie like become a thing, and like how did those two come together? You spent all this time with them, and then you decided to make a movie about this. What happened?
Yeah, so that was 2003 when I met them 2001 at the Weezer thing, and then I went back to my hometown and worked and became the auxiliary pioneer guy and got cheap rent, but I went back and restarted my hometown band as like a worldly band, and we did a tour and we made an album. And then I dropped that band and started my own band with just Witnesses. But then like my bassist left the religion, and then we got another bassist, and then that was some drama. And then the guitarist got disfellowshipped for some intimacy thing. And then I was like, okay, I gave up, and I sold all my gear and I moved to Minneapolis. And then I got to know all these people. So that was 2003. So a couple year gap of doing just music and then giving up on it. Then I moved to Minneapolis, do all these. They were all like super churchy Witnesses. And I was like, they wouldn't really let me into their like club. So Nuclear Gopher was like, for me, they were like, they're like legit ministerial servants doing music, like not my people. I'm like off the charts guy, like barely in. But they were cool, and I got to know them. But that was like a whole then I went to school for photography while I knew the Nuclear Gopher kids. So I was like on the fringes of the Witnesses, but I was still like doing witness stuff. Then I went to Ecuador, Florida, then Ecuador, then Seattle, and then Colorado, where I left the religion. So you were asking about the movie. So then it wasn't until then I had this huge gap. So that was 2008 when I left the religion. Then I went to Vietnam, and I was in Vietnam until 2017. So there was 9 years. But it was in Vietnam where I started working on the project. But the thing that reinitiated the relationship with the people in Minneapolis with Nuclear Gopher was all those musicians and artists in the movie, they were all leaving the religion when I was leaving Minneapolis. And I was sort of leaving the religion, and they were influencing me as I was moving and traveling and doing my need greater thing in Ecuador and Seattle and Colorado, until eventually I was like, yeah, like I'm out. I don't believe any of this. And it was thanks to a lot of them, actually. And it was actually Ryan writing his blog influenced a lot of those other people. And then those other people were my friends, and they influenced me. And so like actually me getting out of the religions in part due to the Hira Hira blog that Ryan wrote.
Yeah, that seemed like it was kind of a big deal down there. Hey.
Yeah, he was like the poster child for like apostasy in Minneapolis. He probably still is.
Wow.
You know,
Does
even more now.
Yeah. Well, okay. If we're getting on to the film, I could talk for hours about this film. Isn't it kind of it seemed like you got a bit lucky there, and you know how they created a lot of their own footage that you used. Hey. Yeah. And like, not only were they artists as musicians, but they were visual artists, and they kind of did their own filmmaking, and you were able to use a lot of that footage. Hey, that's lucky.
It's a gold mine.
Yeah. Shout out to James Zimmerman, who's featured in the documentary, and Ryan Sutter. Those two were kind of the powerhouses of creating visual content in that community, but also quite a lot of other people were also creating content. And actually there's something, I noticed that Anthony Mathenia is in the chat. He was a part of that music scene. And he likes to say that like we only told half the story.
Right.
Because
I'm sure even like half less than that probably. Eh?
Yeah. Like half the people are still, yeah, exactly. We only get like 10 minutes per person, 15 minutes per person. And like how much of a life story can you tell in 15 minutes? We try to piece together to make it a bigger feeling thing. But there's a lot of people that are still in the religion who are from that culture, who are making amazing music and still make music, that are still witnesses. And we couldn't legally use any of their footage or any of their music. There's 12 albums on the Nuclear Gopher Vault, and you can listen to them for free. I'll put the link in the video or put it. But
I wrote down a Bo readout, but that's not in the Nuclear Gopher list, I would imagine. But I want to check that album.
That's a Ryan Sutter album.
Yeah,
he has an album trilogy. He talks about the context, Bo readout, and Louder Longer Lobster by Trumpet Marine, a side project he did. Yeah. And those three, you can listen to those all on Spotify.
Really?
And if you want to support him, you can buy them on Band. You can buy them on Bandcamp. I put together an XJW artist playlist on Spotify, and one on Reverb Nation, and one on SoundCloud, and I'm putting one together on YouTube because there's a lot of amazing artists that are not associated with this film in the Nuclear Gopher community, but there's like global artists like all over the place. I even saw Jacopo De Alejandro. I just interviewed him. It's coming out soon, but he's a Rome artist, a metal artist. He's based in London now. Like there's this movement of art, but a total aside.
I don't know
about the videos.
Did you guys find it? Yeah, because I want to get back to that, but I just want to say one thing. Did you guys find like when you're watching the film, well, not you, Scott, because you've watched it 10,000 times, but Nash, like there was one song that you're like, okay, that really spoke to you. And one of them was when in the film, when you first go and show that their festival that they went to, like when the first big festival, I think about just a minute into there's a song that you guys were that was playing, and I was like, oh my God, that's a great.
Is that song. The one where they were in that pole shed?
Yeah, and it was like kind of dark.
Probably the same one. It kind of had this lead in, and it had the little guitar, like
there was no vocals. It was like the middle of the song. Yeah. It was funny. The middle of the song, maybe the end, the outro or something. And I was like, oh my God, I want to hear that song. Where's that song? Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about, Scott? Probably not.
Yeah, it's Day Trip. No, I know every single second of that movie by heart.
Okay, so I wrote down Day Trip, and I thought it might have been them. I thought it might have been.
Day Trip are amazing. And
are they?
And they consider themselves shoegaze, which is like basically like lots of effects. Like the guitarists are looking at their shoes is the concept. Yeah. And Eric and Chad and a lot of other guys that are like still in the religion that were in those bands were amazing shoegaze artists who were basically creating like incredible soundscapes and it's noisy and walls of sound with like so many layers, and they're just genius. They were geniuses at that already at like 17, 20 years old.
They're like the Edge. For them. They're like the Edge.
Is that a band?
From Greg's favorite band.
Listen, okay. It's you two. You two and I have a complicated relationship. Okay. But Scott, you are adorable and so genuine.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that.
Okay. Yes. Like, I don't know.
So much easier than being fake, actually.
Yeah. We could talk for hours about this, but okay. I want to get back to this footage thing. So now, if I'm asking a question that you don't want to answer, make sure you say, but how did that happen? Like, did somebody present to you? Like, did you go to somebody's house and they're like, there's all these VHS like things on the wall? Like, how did you get all of that footage? Like, how did that happen?
We actually covered a lot on the behind the scenes interviews I do with Ryan on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked out the Witness Underground YouTube channel, there's like deep dives, but basically it's happy hour. So we're just getting drunk on live television. But Ryan talks a lot about how important this time in his life was and how it was basically ripped from him. But he's the only person who had access to everyone's work and art and film. And also him and James were making tons and tons of content. That he's like the only person in the world who has a copy of a lot of this stuff, and that when I got in touch with him, because for me it was like a foggy idea. Like, I knew Eric and Cindy and Chad, and that they had gone through like a difficult time leaving their religion, and it was really complicated, and they're still living in their hometown. So like, it's not just like it was a long time ago in their past, like it was for me in a distant place far, far away. Like, I had moved around a lot. I left my cards in this life hack. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, leave your cards somewhere 4 states away and 3 years ago before and then before you leave, they'll never track you down. For me, it was that, but for them, it's like this raw thing that keeps on being reminded because they're neighbors at Jehovah's Witness. Anyway, like Ryan, what was I trying to say? Ryan talks about how like. I was interviewing people. So I remember, this is what I was trying to say. I remember that there was someone important who had left their religion, and it like shook the foundations of the entire Minneapolis Jehovah's Witness world. And I didn't know why, because I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was, what his name was. So I asked about it to Eric and Cindy, and they put me in touch with, this is how I remember it. They put me in touch with Ryan Sutter, and I reached out to him, cold emailed him, and he wrote back like a 12-page life story, like well written. And I was like, oh my God, this is so powerful and intense. And I didn't know that this was the reason why this happened, and that someone had like, I don't want to reveal too many of the points in the movie, but like this tragic thing happens, and Ryan just took the brunt of everything, and it was tragic, and everyone like treated him terribly, and it was gutted the community. And then Ryan became outspoken, and that was a bigger problem, because he was vocal about it, and you're not allowed to talk. They want to silence you. And so he wrote me this story, and I was like, hey, like, I'm doing this project called ExJW coming out for YouTube, and I think I'd love to interview you, because I know that that's a powerful story, and thank you for sharing so much. It's like such a honor to like get a personally written like life story from somebody before even having a conversation. And then he's like, hey, you're in Denver, I could fly out there. And I was like, yeah, I have a studio all set up, lights, cameras, ready, audio. You can just walk in and we could just like knock it out. He's like, that'd be great. So like a couple months later, and that was like right when I was doing research for what is the ExJW community. I didn't ever look on the internet my whole life about it. And I was doing that because I was going to crowdfund the movie with Seed and Spark. And by the time he got there,
what year was this?
This is 2018.
Okay.
It's like my New Year's resolution for 2018 is like crowdfund a movie, make it, put it out in the world. So it's 2024. So my New Year's resolution in 2018 has finally come true.
Yeah. Good for you.
6 years.
Yeah.
6 years resolution.
Nailed it.
I want to help someone shorten that time period. If you want to make a movie, hit me up. Anyway, so he came out, we shot the interview, and what you're seeing in the movie, and it's playing behind Nash.
Just for everybody watching, that's
streaming on YouTube.
That's Ryan behind the bush.
Yeah,
there he is.
He's in a bush.
Ryan in the bush.
Ryan,
he's great. I'd like to have him on the show one day.
Yeah, he's an awesome
This is me meeting Ryan.
That's the first time?
Yeah, I never met him before. He sat down in my living room with my lights, camera, and audio all rolling. I was like, don't even tell me. I don't want to hear a single word about your life, Ryan. Like, I know this sounds impersonal, but like I have a method, and it's no talking. Sign the paperwork and then sit in the chair, and then you can start talking.
We do that on the channel too, because we'll say that before people come on the show. We'll be like, just let's save it for the show, right? Yeah. Don't tell me too much, right? And then you hear it for the first time. So I totally get it, but not that we're at the level of you or anything.
One of my favorite quotes
you guys are doing great.
On that movie was I can't remember which guy said it. I'm also bad with names, but he said that the witnesses have they feel a necessity to shit on former members' memories.
Yeah, that's Chad.
Oh yeah,
that was Chad that said
the necessity to shit on the memory you have of someone.
Yeah,
doing character assassination.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah. Oh. I'm a bad guy in this because I'm in the same town I grew up in, right?
Yeah.
So
that's the hardest situation
they
for this.
Hate me.
Well, and I actually don't have any. I know it's been done to me, but I wouldn't know because nobody talks to me, right? I have a huge, massive, gigantic family that I have zero contact with. But I remember from when I was in how that would happen. Somebody would get disfellowshipped, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're just going to totally forget about all the good stuff. Right. And this person is horrible now. And then when they get reinstated, it's like, oh yeah, they were decent people. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
I'll give you an example. So I know I'm not going to say who said this, but just recently it was said about me when I got to talk about it that but kind of like looking at me kind of cross and said, but there was always something wrong with you, right?
Yeah,
there was always something wrong with you.
Wow.
And it's like, and the crazy thing is, there wasn't, like, as far as Jehovah's Witnesses go, fuck, I love that fucking religion, and I was hardcore in. I would fight.
You were hardcore.
I would fight tooth and nail anybody who said anything bad about it. It was my life. Like there's no way. But now that I'm out, they can't reconcile the fact that I say anything about it with who I was. So all of a sudden it's like, well, you were fucked up. Like my mom was determined I had brain tumors. Wow. and wanted me to get CAT scans to prove I didn't, because she thought I'd completely lost my mind. Another example, a guy here who was an elder, like a big leading elder, who was acting like an asshole, but was still an elder. Just a few years ago, he, if I brought that up to my dad or anybody else, they would just be like, "Oh, it's Jehovah will deal with it, and he loves Jehovah," and they would just stick up for him. Fast forward 3 years, he just got disfellowshipped, and I heard somebody say, "Oh, yeah, well, he went crazy. He just went crazy. He's just a psychopath." That's what they said. He's a psychopath. He cheated on his wife. He's a psychopath. And it's like, you just were defending this guy who was acting like an asshole, but because he was an elder, everything's cool. The second he breaks a watchtower law, fuck that guy.
Right. I feel like it reveals that they have, I think you mentioned cognitive dissonance once or twice already in this conversation. Like, in order for them to feel okay with meting out the hateful punishment of shunning and treating you like an enemy, because they now have to believe you're the enemy, and they're doing the bidding of the cult, like, you have to treat this person like shit. That's your new job. They're now in that category. So make up a story in your mind where you feel comfortable treating them shitty and talking about them behind their back in a terrible way. And then it makes sense to punish them because they're a bad person. But you have to first make them a bad person in your mind.
Yes.
Even though you have amazing memories with them and good times, and you defend them to death if they were still a member.
And on the flip side, when they are a member, how many things did we look the other way on? Like they constantly have articles. Yeah, they have constant articles about forgiving your brother and if they do something, because you can be an asshole, and if you're a believing Jehovah's Witnesses and you're following all the rules, you can still be an asshole, and people have to be like, that's okay. He loves Jehovah. We got to forgive him and move on. But the second you leave, doesn't matter for what reason, they'll make something up.
It's like decades of pent up. What a fucking asshole that guy is! But I can't say anything. And now I'm gonna unleash my huge.
Finally, I could say.
I've been saving this for 14 years. What a piece of shit!
Yeah, I can't wait to tell everybody.
You guys, there's like so many things we could talk about in this video. In this documentary, no spoilers obviously, but you know what I wanted to talk about too is like, it's so interesting, you know, the movie Napoleon Dynamite, right? This was made all by Mormons, right? And I don't know how many were strict Mormons, but I know that there's a real kind of Mormon influence there, but it just
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of them are Mormons in there. It shows in these kind of communities how much talent there is there, you know, and how much artistic like creativity exists in there. And it's this pool. I know, like Nash and I play music too, and we've been in bands, and I played music once with this guy who was just incredible. If he, I guarantee you would know his name if he didn't grow up as a Witness, you know. And just songwriter, virtuoso guitar player, incredible singer. And, you know, but it really is amazing how much talent is in these groups. Hey. And you can see that from the movie here. There's these like talented people, but it's funny how they're like still trying to be good witnesses. I love that, how you brought that out and showed that, like, for a while they're like playing this like we want to be creative and even, you know, people that are pioneers and yet, you know, they're still good witnesses. That's such a great part of that film.
Yeah, and it was actually like an embedded part of their culture. Like the nuclear gopher had like created this, Ryan calls it a safe space for kids waiting to die, or waiting to survive Armageddon. And they had to kind of like prove that they were good to everyone else in the community, so that they would leave them alone when it came to being, like James calls Rhett, a quirky pioneer because he played drums.
Yes,
like the drumming was the quirky part, not the part that where he's an active cult member.
that's the normal part.
But they all kind of did that, and I think Eric was a ministerial servant. James was a pioneer, probably a ministerial servant. Ryan was a good dad, running the literature counter. Like they were all trying, like one step above the base level Jehovah's Witness, so that you could like be a rock star.
Yeah,
exactly.
But you can't get a record label
were in
deal.
a band. We were in a band. We were both ministerial servants, and we had an elder. He was the bass player. Hey,
yeah.
And maybe it's a northern thing because, like,
you got away with a lot more.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like we were. I not got away with a lot more, but I mean, it was more okay. Like say like 4 teenage Jehovah's Witnesses who just barely went to meetings, didn't go in service. Nobody would be like, "Hey, can you play at my wedding?" Right. They'd be like, "Ooh, you know, they're spiritually weak."
Yeah.
But we got to play everything because people were like, "Oh, look at those guys! They're going to give the talk on Sunday, and they're going to play music the night before." Yeah. Dumb. It's dumb.
I can't tell you also how many times, because I've been in quite a few Witness bands. I can't tell you how many times we had the problem of, oh, this person's not doing what this not in good standing. Should they be in the band? Or this person is in the band, but then something happened and now we got to kick them out of the band. And then finally it happened to me, where I was the one that got kicked out of the band.
So frustrating. It's like, you know how hard it is to like have a successful relationship with another human being, even a friendship. It's like that takes effort on both people's parts. Being in a band is like you're marrying 3, 4, 5 people, and you have to practice, like, and you have to want to do it. And even if you don't want to, you still have to do it because it's part of the agreement that you forged in like the brotherhood of the band. And to have some other super brotherhood telling you, like, that isn't your brother. Like, yo, this is a relation. This is like a tight, intimate relationship we have. We speak music together. Like I can't do that with everybody. I can only do it with those 3 people. Someone else telling you who you can and cannot do that with. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like they suck. They're not part of it. They're not going to be a part of the thing.
It's so crazy that you mentioned this intimate relationship, because when I was going through my waking up process, I told the bandmate that I was with, and he was kind of my best friend at the time. And I'm like explaining to him, I have a problem with this, I have a problem with that. And what about this? And what about that? And at the end of the conversation, he said, we have to break up the band because get the feeling I'm unevenly yoked with an unbeliever. That's how he put it. Right. And that's so true. Right. And it's so weird because, this is the super talented guy I was talking about. And he was my best friend at the time, and I haven't spoke to him. And I think he's an elder now and need greater. I haven't spoken to him in like 13 years, but we were like best friends. But yeah, you have this intimate relationship. And he experiences this incredible cognitive dissonance because we would always get together and drink, and we're playing like Radiohead, and we were writing our own music and all of that. But then he breaks it up because, he can't be involved with an unbeliever. So nuts.
I think it all comes down to identity. And that's a topic I'd love to dive in with you guys, maybe on another call, but like as a Jehovah's Witness, you identify with Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses, which are really kind of separate entities, right? Like you have the leadership who publishes literature, and then you have to, as a community, obey, but it's all one thing, and we are it. I am it is kind of how they make you think about it. And if anything deviates from that thing that you identify with, and you're required to identify with, then it's an attack on you personally, even though it's really just someone questioning what the Watchtower leadership ghost written, and they're like afraid to take ownership of the idea because probably they are making it up, pulling it out of their ass. And they don't want to blame some bad idea on it, be blamed for a bad idea, or have a bad idea be associated with someone who leaves the religion or someone who's like a prominent person, whatever. So like there's reasons why they do it, but when we leave the religion, like now our identity is ex-Jehovah's Witness. Well, that's a weird identity, kind of like I'm going to spend the rest of my life as an atheist talking about how God's not real. And it's like, well, if it's not real, why are we talking about it? And like if Jehovah's Witnesses aren't that important in your life and you don't agree with them, then why are you the antithesis of them? So like there's this whole weird thing about like, when do we become not ex-Jehovah's Witnesses? I happen to like all of you guys, so I'm here.
Me too. It's funny. I'm glad.
It's a great question.
I love that you brought this up, Scott. This is great. I can't believe you did, because I had a conversation last night, and I was like, man, I wish we could get this topic going tomorrow, because I agree 100%. When, especially growing up Jehovah's Witness, your identity was given to you essentially, right? You are one of Jehovah's Witnesses from the time you're a little kid, not standing for the anthem in school and sitting in the hallway for holiday stuff. You are that, right? I found an old book after my mom died. I got some of my childhood stuff, and in it was a thing all your classmates wrote, what makes you who you are and special. Guess first thing I wrote, because I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Most important thing, that's what I am. And I was 7. So that goes to show, like, that's how it works. So now we have all these different ex-Jehovah's Witnesses at different stages in their life. Some are lucky enough to get out when they're young. Some of us are older. And like you said, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, but I don't really identify as an ex-Jehovah's Witness. And I say that tongue in cheek because I do, for sure I am, right? And it does come up in conversation a lot, because I think it's because it was such a big part of my life for so long. Maybe if it had a smaller impact, it wouldn't be such a big part of my life. Or if my kids were out of it, that would be better. But so that's part of why I deal with it. But I want to know, like, what advice would you guys give to someone who's, I don't know, 19 to 25, somewhere in that age group, who's gotten out and they're trying to figure out life. Maybe they want to go see the world or do something. All of a sudden they've lost all their identity because they were given an identity as a Jehovah's Witness, but now they don't know what to do. What would be your advice? Because, Scott, you traveled, saw the world. wasted some time with the Watchtower again, but you did some good stuff. Greg, you went, you had a family young, so it was different. And I know that you're very business focused too, but also a creative guy. I got asked this question, and I just am curious what you guys would say.
I think a hack to the whole problem is to change your location, and that can be like the next town over, just to like not have those people and familiar sights and patterns from the old days influencing you or re-triggering, and the feeling where you're free completely without anyone watching, because like the Jehovah's Witnesses, someone's always watching. Like the cover art of the movie is eyeballs staring from the darkness below, always watching. For the Witness Underground movie, partly because of that idea. But like going to a place where people don't know you is really helpful to feeling free to create a new identity, to try on different worldviews, or try on different lifestyles, to try on different clothes, to try on different anything. I happen to like what I learned living in another culture. I feel like that helped me give a more humanist perspective on humanity and my life, my lived experience, understanding how other cultures work and that there's completely different worldviews. But also I think it's important to do inner work, and that's a huge thing. Like the self-help world has been a topic of deep interest for me, to try and completely wipe clean the things I've taught. And that reveals that there's programming as well, like stuck still, that I think a lot of it takes years or the rest of your life to unwind, or even realize that stuff is still happening because of the religion, or even just like American culture, Canadian culture, the Midwest where I'm from. Like there's all these different parts of our cultural influence, and to realize what those things are and how much we identify with those things, but to like wipe it clean and then rebuild, like go research, do things, try new things, put yourselves in situations you never thought you would do, to see how you react, to see how you feel, and listen to what's happening with your subconscious, with your inner world. And I don't know, be independent, I think, is maybe the most important thing. Free thinking, independence.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a very interesting topic for me. I love one of I think Bob Dylan's quotes, where he talks about how life is a journey the whole time, right? And you are always trying to get home, right? And home, the way he described it, is who you truly are. Right. And that it doesn't stop when you're 30. It doesn't stop with when you're 40 or you're 50, you're 60. You continue to do it your whole life. Right. The problem is that when you leave and you first left the religion, now you're, in my opinion, for a lot of people like me, that's when I started, because up until from 0 to 30, I was told who I was. Right. And now from 30, I'm starting to figure out who actually I am, right? And that not only it's a lifelong thing, but it does you have a lot of catching up to do, lots of catching up to do. And my advice to somebody that's 19 or 20 or 25 would be, in that first little bit, that first year or 2 or 3, try not to make any big decisions. Just try to take it slow. And that's where I made a mistake, where I'm like, okay, now I'm free of these chains. I can like open my wings and I can do, I don't know, maybe I'm just smoke a lot of pot or get drunk or sleep with a lot of people. It's like, I would say slow it down, and it's so hard to do, but slow it down because you don't know who you are yet. Right? This deprogramming process takes time. And I think I'm still deprogramming myself. I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe I'll do it for my whole life. I don't know. But that's what I would say. Slow it down. And also, I love what you said, Scott, about try to stay independent. Try not to get wrapped up in another cult, because it does happen. You know what I mean? And so, I try to keep I'm not afraid to go anywhere to talk about anything. Try not to keep your mind plastic instead of concrete.
Yeah.
Right.
We can get attached to thoughts, right? To ways of thinking. I think we knew that, right? Because we had all the answers. And so we were very attached to one side. We talked about it earlier. If, in Scott's family, he saw Catholics and Jehovah's Witnesses and everybody was fighting, but both were convinced. Now that I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, I watch conservatives and liberals, Republicans, Democrats, atheists, Christians, Muslims, all and fighting. And everybody is just like dug in. This is me. I am this. I don't subscribe to that. I vote now because I'm allowed. And, the way I vote, I don't love that party and everything they stand for, but I also don't love the other party and everything they stand for. But I do vote according to what my personal needs are for me and my family. But I don't subscribe to everything they do. I don't get on Twitter and rave about everything they do because I don't necessarily agree. And you don't have to. You don't have to jump on board with one side or the other. I think we live in a very polarized world, and it's hard to stay neutral. It's hard to stay plastic that way and moldable. But I think it's important when you're figuring out who you are to be careful. Because I think we do, we have those pre-existing, biases, and I think as Jehovah's Witnesses, we had them too. So even when we get out and we do have some political beliefs, even though we weren't supposed to, we have some moral beliefs that maybe we have to work through too. We things like homosexuality, transgender, like it goes on and on. These are all things that now here we are grown adults, and we're dealing with them. And so I think, like you guys said, it's really important to figure out where you stand. Where do I stand on it? How do I feel about it and why? And then read about it and watch some interviews and do some, the crazy words nowadays, do the research, but do it, like actually do it.
And you guys, when you first left, Scott, this might be a little different for you because I don't know if the leaving was kind of multiple times, but for us, there was one distinct, I've left. Did you go through this big like reading thing where read? Yeah. Like you read like a whole bunch of books. I did. Yeah. Like, lots on evolution and, exactly, and history. And
yeah. My girlfriend at the time, I basically was like, first time saying the L word, I was like, hey, I love you. Can you come to this park? I need to talk to you about something. And she came to the park and I was like, I'm no longer ever going to go back to a Kingdom Hall. And I want you to hear me out on something. And this is what my pitch is. Let's sell everything and travel. And we'll have like a physical journey, like traveling, experiencing new things while deconstructing this religion. And she took her time to like figure out her thing. And we went for like 6 months with the money we had. But we brought like 12 books a person. And we would sit next to like a rope swing into like a tropical pond, like reading books, like teaching us for the first time. Because we basically like did the whole finger in the ears, la 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 la, to anything about evolution for our whole lives. Because that's not real. That can't possibly be real, how nature works. DNA, like you believe in DNA and you believe that when two people mix, their children look a little bit like one, a little bit like the other, like a little mix, but like not the idea that if you do that over millions of years that it changes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Anyway, like the only, like the obvious thing is that there will be changes. Anyway, so we were just reading like, oh my God, there's like 17 different kinds of proto-elephants before today's elephant. But like, and if you go back far enough, like that was like some other, I don't remember what what we came before, but like some other kind of animal that like it has a shared ancestor to these two different crazy different lines. And just like, whoa, page turners. Like, did you finish that page?
Yeah.
We were just like consuming literature this way, like blowing our minds. And it was really,
that's one thing powerful. I did like Richard Dawkins because I don't like Richard Dawkins books on religion. They're well written, but and they're good books, but his writing on like the selfish gene and his writing on evolution, he's such a good writer there and describes it so well. Those were really powerful for me, those books.
Actually, the God delusion is interesting. Everyone in this film, well, at least, Eric and then a couple of their friends in Minneapolis, we were we were buying those books, and then like, you have to read this. There's a
Really?
chapter 6
No
about
kidding.
Jehovah's Witnesses. Like we all read God Delusion as witnesses.
I mean, I of course have read that book too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a killer.
And I noticed Sam Harris's book. Sam Harris's book, End of Faith, was in the movie.
Nice.
I saw that immediately. I was like, oh, I've read that like 3 times.
I tried to put as many little like Easter eggs in the film as possible, and that was one. And that was just out. I mean, I don't know if Eric and Cindy did that because they knew I was coming over to their house, but it looked like it was just sitting on their record player. Yeah, I was like, I need to just capture that because that particular book was important for me. And
I had spiritual books that were important to me too, like Eckhart Tolle. I don't read much about him now, but he had played a big. I don't know if you guys know Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, I read him when I was leaving.
Yeah. He actually played a big part in my waking up process. I don't know why. It's, I just that book really resonated with me. And like other kind of Buddhist books, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not an atheist, but I'm not really associated with any religion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's one that those style of books played a big part in my waking up too.
Sam Harris played a huge role for me, not just the End of Faith, because Jehovah's Witness bought me that book actually, and I was like, wow, this is so incredible. Yeah, and he's still a good friend to this day, deep out of the religion, of course. We kind of left in a way on a similar trajectory, but Sam Harris he's one of the early 2000s, mid 2000s. There was the 4 horsemen of the atheist apocalypse, which included Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins, and Daniel Dennett, which I'm starting to read Dennett now for the first time. He's like the 4th horseman I never read.
He's Ringo Starr.
Philosophy. It's difficult for me. You gotta be smart to read that stuff.
Yeah, he gets really intense. Like I'm using audiobooks. He's talking about consciousness. He writes a lot about what is consciousness, which for me is a fascinating topic that no one knows. And that blows my mind that no one knows. That makes me feel like we're in a simulation. Like if no one can find it, if no one knows where it is, we're brilliant, but we don't know the thing that like makes us turn the wheels. Like we can't figure out what it is.
Guy in the sky. He made it all. He made it all. He's controlling it. That's where you go.
Kenny Rogers in the sky.
But the thing I love about Sam Harris that really affected my life and has formed a lot of my worldview is that he's a non-religious person who deals a lot with what are considered spiritual concepts. Yeah. And he goes back to the roots of Buddhist ideologies, not even ideologies, Buddhist practices, such as standard stillness meditation. Like, what is your mind doing? Let's take a look. But you can't use an external objective viewpoint to find out. You have to use your own subjective mind to analyze what your mind is doing. So it's complicated because then these weird loops happen. Yeah. And that's one of the Dennett ideas, like infinite loops, I think he talks about. Like We're a Strange Loop. It's a different book, but he references Dennett a lot because he was like a friend. I just read this book called We're a Strange Loop. And it's like, damn, are we just that basic? Like self-awareness itself is the thing that loops upon itself, and it becomes, I don't know, we get
interesting.
Deja vu is like a weird anomaly out of that. Anyway, it's a complex, chaotic thing to figure out. But Sam Harris practices on meditation, removes all the woo from meditation and all the spirituality from it. And I love that because let's get to the pure thing. What's happening in your brain? What's happening in your subconscious? Let's observe it, and then let's see the patterns.
Did you ever see Sam Harris talk with Richard Dawkins about the meditation? Richard Dawkins like, yeah, whatever. This is. I don't need this. That was awesome. And Sam Harris is trying to say, no, there's quite a bit of benefit here. I think you. Richard is like, yeah, forget it. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that's. Prayer is like meditation. I mean, that's why.
Yeah, I'm right. It is. Yeah,
same,
for sure.
Same kind of thing.
Actually, that's a great point, and I feel like I've not prayed since 15 years to a God, but the act of doing it isn't different. I feel like it's almost like a meditation hack. Like, oh, you don't know how to do meditation? Well, just talk to an imaginary being in the sky who loves you. Like, oh. Yeah. And then he'll do powerful things to make you.
Gets you out of your thoughts, in a way, sort of.
It's almost like writing. It's like write down what's happening in your mind. What are you concerned about? What are you stressed about? Say it in your mind's with your mind's inner voice, or say it out loud. Like that can help you formulate where you're at. And that's good too. Yeah. It's like observing yourself. It's just, what I don't like about prayer is that it's like, okay, yeah, it's a hack and it helps you do this thing and it can have its immediate benefits, but it's relying on an external force and making you deny that yet you don't have any power to do anything. Yeah. And then that's a self-empowerment thing that's so important, is that you actually have the power to change your life. You're the only one, actually.
Yeah. And you should take the credit for it. Exactly. When you make a big change, when you've done the work for it, then you should take the credit and realize, hey, I'm capable of doing that. And I'm proud of myself for doing it. Yeah. And it means I can do something else. I can do the next thing, right? Like I can do it. If you always just give the credit away to something invisible or something else, something external, you'll easily fall back into something, some bad behavior or some negative thing, because you're like, oh man, I mean, what am I going to do? It's God and the devil. I have no power over this.
Right. Which I think is unhealthy.
So
I got one more thing I want to talk about before we go, because I know we're getting late.
Yeah.
It's along those lines. So people that are, yes. So they're in the initial stages and they're leaving. Okay. So we're talking about things that are wins in life. Scott, this film, this is a big win, I think. I think this is great. This is a success. It's just going to get more successful. They're not all wins though, right? Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we get our heart broke. Sometimes we're financially broke. Sometimes, we don't know where our next meal's coming from for some people. Now, when you left the Witnesses, you were told you were going to fail. You're going to fail. And you're going to fail because you don't subscribe to my beliefs. And the devil is out to get you. The world is wicked. Everyone out there is going to hurt you. And there's no nice people. And they're all phonies. And so when you fail, when you get your heart broke, when a relationship doesn't work out, how do you keep that thinking from creeping in and realizing where it comes from? And how do you deal from it or with it after?
Wow, I think you're almost talking about motivations, like to stay true to your path and not let the influences of these people who are ultimately in a very unhealthy situation and treating you in a very abusive, manipulative way, the active witnesses. Like ultimately, it sounds like you're talking about crawling back to the religion because it's like a community and a safety net of a kind. But is that right? Is that kind of?
Yeah, I think that, and the fact that everything is kind of an Armageddon to us. Like it's kind of like it's the worst. Like say I like a girl and I'm 25 years old and I'm totally in love with her, and it lasts for 6 months and she breaks up with me and I'm heartbroken, and that's normal. That happens all the time. But if you're in that state where you put yourself out there and you got broken over it, you got hurt, maybe you feel like, man, this was going to happen. This was bound to happen. And it's not safe out here. I got to go back. And it kind of feels like world ending, like sometimes failures can feel more than they should. How do you deal with like failures along the way, and not just in relationships, but in whatever else that comes along in life, right? Like how do you keep it from being so overwhelmingly, dramatic in your life that it makes you feel like, oh, I can't do this?
I feel like there's a way of seeing the world that I've learned maybe from travel and experiencing other cultures, that I realize people are really well-meaning and well-intentioned everywhere. Like most people are like I'm more humanist than anything if I'm going to find an identity. That people actually want you to get what you want and want you to get the things that you need. Don't like to see other people suffering in general. Most people fit that category of genuinely a good person who has empathy. And of course there's some people who don't, but for the most part that is true. And if you need help, you can find people that will help you. How to find community, I think is like an important, because you need to find community. We're social creatures. And that was a community. It's a very unhealthy community, the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's very conditional. You have to be performing at their set standards, which are outrageous. And you have to do a bunch of nonsense and obey. And anyway, there's a lot of other healthier communities. But it's a great topic on like how to find a community. And I think shared interest is the thing. So go find out what things you have. If you don't know what they are, if you've denied yourself like hobbies and curiosities, go do all the things, try all the things until you find something that is really interesting for you and pursue that curiosity. Because with that shared interest with someone else, you'll find natural friendships that form. But like, it's actually a flaw, I think, in the human society, especially in the secular world, that we don't have other good replacements for what churches and congregations and religions and even like spiritual cults offer, which is instant community. And
great point. Yeah,
you can their doors are open. You have to sacrifice your freedom. And with the Jehovah's Witnesses or other similar cults. With spiritual cults, I feel like they're experimenting all the time and repeating all the same mistakes, but it's very light and simple. And it's like, well, this person's ego or this is a narcissist, but it's kind of simpler versions of large established cults like Jehovah's Witnesses. But I feel like I'm trying to avoid all that stuff because I'm triggered by it. And I think it's dangerous to get roped into those kinds of communities, but finding shared interest and accepting that there isn't necessarily a community like that community that you were a part of. It's an interesting form that humans have created to feel like we're part of something bigger than we are. When reality is like maybe just mountain biking and hanging out with your 5 mountain biking friends is enough community for you to be satisfied. But we are taught to find our identity, our friendships, our relationships by a shared obedience. And that's, I don't know, we found out that it's not healthy. Maybe there's another way that we don't really need to have the tribalistic village that a church seems to offer, that we can find that somewhere else. I mean, in a way, I feel like I have it with this online community, and there's a reason why the XW community is so valuable, because then it's like, oh, there's an instant group of people that totally understand my background and my perspective in life, and they're just here on the internet, and they're always here. There's hundreds of thousands of them in every country and culture. And it's a shared, like I talked to a guy from, Nigeria on Facebook the other day. He reached out to me and we had a conversation about like work. And it was like, yeah, well, we were taught this, like, and it's like, we have the same culture. He's Nigerian and I'm American, like in a way, this weird subculture. And so that's really refreshing. It's like, well, we have this global thing we can tap into that kind of can fill that void and that familiarity. But I don't know how to replace it. I don't think the secular world's come up with anything good. The political world definitely hasn't.
Nope.
I was thinking about that the other day, about how, we really do have a mental health crisis that's going on in the general, at least in the Western world. I don't know about anywhere else. And I think I was thinking that this is really evidence of the failure of religion, right? And how so many people have, as a civilization, we have kind of en masse left this institution that was built, right? And because it's failed, right? It's failed for people that have different forms of sexuality. It's failed for women. It's only been a success for a small minority of people, and how there's really nothing to replace it, right? This like in-person kind of community, but I don't know, maybe we'll all figure it out here eventually.
Well, I think that goes with my, where I was going with it, I think is, we all have to find contentment with our lot in life. It doesn't mean you have to, just be stuck and stay where you're at. Like, you should dream and you should plan and you should explore and try all those things. But I think it can be tough because you thought there was going to be this great ending. You thought that there was going to be a huge payoff, that I'm on the inside of this huge plan. This is not like, this doesn't matter because in the end, I'm going to be in paradise. It doesn't matter what I want. I'm going to feel great. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to see everybody I lost, and it's going to be awesome. And so I think it's so important to learn contentment. Like you said, Scott, maybe it's just mountain biking that day or whatever, right? Like try and find that same happiness, that same purpose, I guess. I think sometimes, just because you don't have religion doesn't mean you lack purpose. It doesn't mean you lack hope. I hope I leave the world a better place. I hope better things for my kids. I hope to be a kind person. And I have a purpose in my life. in little things every day. And I hope, I think we all do. You don't have to have religion. And I'm also not judging people that do. If you want to love Jesus and you think you're going to heaven someday, that's great. Like, that doesn't matter to me. I think it's just how you live your life now, though, right?
I think finding something to focus your attention on the present moment is really valuable a little bit every day. Like, go enjoy something, go relax, go be in nature, do the sport, do the activity, do the hobby. Gabor Mate, who's an amazing, what to call him, doctor, PhD or something, in the space of mental health. He talks about that a lot. And I think he's a valuable wealth of resource. And I lost my thought, but yeah, being present. It's something that
I struggle
super
with that
valuable
every day.
Oh,
Some people live in the past. Some people I live in the future. Too much.
yeah.
Well, it's tough because time will go by, right? If we're planning too far ahead, like, you have to plan, but also if you're thinking too far ahead, you sometimes you miss right now. And you don't go on that trip, or you don't go do that thing, or you don't go visit those people because you're like, fuck, I'm tired. It's the weekend and I don't want to hang out with anyone or whatever. And so, and that's fine. And it's good once in a while, but I think it's important to just constantly, maybe, like, don't push yourself to exhaustion, but push yourself a little bit to be uncomfortable, because usually it pays off. Whether it's new friends, new experiences, I think that pays off if you follow the things that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. I think you brought something up that I think is worth a valid point to make about the idea of Armageddon and the paradise as something far in the future that informs every decision you make now. So you're I'm going to put off the now and the enjoyment and the love for, or the passion that you have for something, because I'm going to be able to do that later. And it's a concept that we also see, like, in American US culture, about like the American dream, like retirement goals, buying a house. Like, buying a house is great for the economy. Could be terrible personally.
Right.
So they were incentivized to do these things. This dream is out in front of us. And it's like, once you accomplish the dream, then you're purposeless because you've already did it. And then it's like, well, then what? And I feel that and it's something I think is really dangerous. Like, what if you don't have massive goals, and the goal is to actually enjoy more of the now on a regular basis, like you were saying, and try not to adopt these massive one-time super goals. And like, obviously Armageddon and the end of the world are out of your control, and paradise is out of your control. They're not real, they're fantasy, so super out of control and reality. Buying a house is tangible, but it's like, will that bring you happiness? Probably. There's reasons to do it, but it's not necessarily that the thing will make you happy, or like reaching a certain amount of money isn't going to make you happy. It's nice to have goals. It's good to have goals, but I think there's a problem with the human psyche that we put these massive goals and then we sacrifice everything to get it. But when we get there, it's not fulfilling. And you said something about making meaning and purpose in life. There was a book that helped me. It was called The Atheist Way. And actually, Eric recommended it, Eric Alvendale from the movie, right when I was sort of like leaving, just left the religion. He's like, you should check this out because you're going to need meaning. And the book asked a lot of questions. I don't remember actually like formulating meaning, but this film gave me a lot of meaning. It was very hard to do, but like, and re-triggering and traumatizing. I learned a lot about my personal traumas, and lots of onion layers opened making this movie, or even making the YouTube channel. But finding meaning is important, and I don't think you're going to get it from belief in an afterlife or buying a house or another, the American dream of accomplishing some huge financial goal.
Yeah.
Listen, Scott.
I think it's tough. Oh yeah, you go ahead, Greg. Greg's got.
No, I was gonna put a bow on this part, but what you got something else to say, Nash?
Oh no, we can put a bow.
I was gonna say, Scott, I expected you to be smart and well spoken, but you're kind of blowing us away here.
Yeah, I was looking forward to talking to
guys are
Scott.
great.
I feel like we could go for 4 hours here.
Listen, okay,
I'd love to do this again. Anytime.
I'm gonna be the bad
we'll
guy.
just do it again.
and kind of bring this to our final topic here. And, I'm wondering if our final topic should have been like their first topic. There is there's some news here with regards to with the video, the documentary, the movie, whatever we call it. What's been happening? What's happening? Tell us what's going on with
people were asking
Witness Underground. What's happening? What do you got planned for the future? What just took place? Take it away.
Okay. The big announcement is that it is now available on 2 major streaming platforms and another third platform. Amazon has it for rent or buy, which is massive. It's the biggest film library in the world, so like the most effective in terms of reach. It is limited in some places, region blocked in some places. Tubi is the big one. Tubi actually supports filmmakers. They pay with its ad revenue based. And so if you watch on Tubi for free for you, it actually can pay the ongoing Witness Underground project. So that one's amazing. And another one came available this week called Vesta Stream, also free with ads. And so that one, if you like, a lot of people in Europe have been saying they can't access it on Tubi, or even Amazon because it's region blocked. So possibly check Vesta Stream. And then coming up, there's going to be a bunch more. So we'll announce them as they come. But if you're holding out, you'll be able to watch it free with ads on YouTube soon, with YouTube movies and TV. Also Plex will have it soon, and a few others. Over the Top Studio, F Awesome, I think, is another one that picked it up. So there's more coming all the time, but there's 3 right now available, and I'm keeping it up to date on witnessunderground.com. Every time one comes available, I've like stripped out the entire website. It just says, watch the film here, watch it here, watch it here. Here's the links, basically, to keep it really simple. And now watching Witness Underground is now the way to support Witness Underground, the project and the movie, which is amazing to say, because I've been asking people for money and financial support and trying to make that valuable like exchange for everybody for years, and it's now finally just go watch it and share it with all your friends. The more you watch it, the better. Turn off the volume and leave it on running 24 hours a day.
I watched it on Tubi, because I watched it. I don't know when I watched it, like 6 months ago or however long ago. And I don't even know what platform I watched it on. But this time I watched it on Tubi, and it worked great. It was I'd only had 2 ads in the whole movie.
I didn't get many ads.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't many.
Yeah, cool. No, it was great. And what's going on with the Patreon, the podcast and everything?
Yeah, so Witness Underground podcast. I did a shift this year because I kind of have to like shift gears to. I want the YouTube channel to also make ad money, because I've been making videos for 8 years and never got any of the revenue. So it's like if you want to support Witness Underground, the YouTube channel is the ongoing project. So I interview and have been interviewing artists who escaped cults, especially this cult. And it's been the vast majority have been people who are ex-witnesses, who are artists. They're authors, musicians, filmmakers. And there's a painter coming on soon. Cool. That channel, if you watch it, I need to get 400 watch hours before we get monetized. So help us watch the videos.
Come on. How hard can that be?
All right. I'll throw them on I got YouTube Premium, so I can just have them play.
Nice. Thank you.
We got to make this into a short and put it on. We'll make it.
We will. We'll clip this and we'll stick it on a short. Otherwise, it'll get buried.
Yeah, because it really just, this is just such you have such an incredible thing. And you know what? I'm a Patreon member, proud Patreon member, and you get a lot of value from that. Like, you put out that New Yorker article about the guy who invented Dungeons and Dragons, and he's
how
like,
cool is that?
Like, what the hell?
Like the most famous like occult game.
Yeah,
global game. He's an ex-witness.
Yeah,
how crazy!
He was kind of like a current witness when, like, what?
He was a witness when he created Dungeons and Dragons, and that's why he got disfellowshipped.
Of course he did.
How wild is that?
This not well-known ExJW lore? Like, he should be just as well known as the ex-governing body member, whatever, his crisis of conscience guy. Everybody
exactly.
Yeah.
He's a global hero for so many human beings, and no one has any idea about that past.
He's got a cult following.
That's incredible.
Well, so join the Patreon.
Yeah. So Patreon's a way to support the project, and watching the film on Vimeo or buying the film on Vimeo. There's something I'm going to do that I've been saying I'm going to do for a long time, and it's because I'm like trying to work with a greater team, and that's not always working out. I need to just do it myself, which is edit all the raw interviews. So like we were saying in Witness Underground, there's 5 people. and they each get like 10 to 15 minutes of airtime of telling a piece of their story, which is like a huge transformational event. Everyone here pretty much has gone through something like that who's listening in the chat and watching. And the whole interviews are fascinating because half the movie's about music, but the vast amount of the interviews are about their personal stories and journeys out. So we only got to show basically Ryan's journey out, a little bit of James that related to Ryan's story, and then some of Cindy's, where like Chad and Eric don't really tell their story in the film, but they did tell their story coming out in the interview. So I'm going to put those on the Vimeo as extras. So if you buy the film there, or if you have bought it, those will come available. And I'm not sure how the Blu-ray works, but I'll probably re-release the Blu-ray with Ryan Sutter's help to have those in the future editions. Anyway, so those are all ways to do it. We have a store now that you can get on the YouTube channel. It has XJW art for guests that have been on my channel, and the soundtrack for the film, the Blu-ray, the DVD, the digital soundtrack, the physical soundtrack is a CD, and then like books by Micah Allen Losh, book by, we have someone in the chat here, Denise Wise Brach. She does Peaceful Cacophony. She wrote a book called Rising from the Ashes of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a personal memoir and self-help book that she's my very first interview I did as like a Zoom call remote interview. I'd done the other stuff in person. She's been in the chat. So her book's on there. You can buy it. And it's like the idea, I want to create an ongoing store that's to support those artists, and then like some small percentage, like 10% or 15, goes towards the Witness Underground project to keep it going, as a way to like, hey, if you buy it here, you're helping out both this artist and future artists to help get their work promoted. And that's like my rule. Like I work with people who have art to share, and right now there's exclusive art on the YouTube channel if you're a member. Right now we have 0 members, so you could be number 1. But the idea, like, I just interviewed Bonnie Root, who is a Hollywood career actress. She's been in a bunch of soap opera actor roles, a bunch of feature film actor roles, comedy. She worked with Ryan Reynolds and like famous actors, like huge names. And now she's making her own movies, and her first one is about grooming, that her experience growing up in the Jehovah's Witnesses. And she's basically made a award-winning film about grooming and how this works and how like abusive and nuanced this form of control and manipulation is. And now she's making a film about her Jehovah's Witness experience called Diary of Heather Keating. But Sissy, her film about grooming, is on my channel exclusively. So if you if you become a member, you get that. Cool. And also, okay, the thing is, I don't want to confuse it. I have a Patreon and a YouTube membership. They're exactly the same. So whichever one you prefer, the same information and shared content is on each. Patreon I've been doing for 5 years, or almost 6 years. YouTube's just brand new. I just got the option. But anyway, like the YouTube channel is short interviews, long interviews, and
what I love about you. What I love about you, Scott, is what's important if you are producing anything really, a business or a artistic endeavor, is not just the story, but it's the execution. Right? It's like if you're wearing a shirt with a stain on it, that's all people are going to see, if you know what I'm talking about. So I love the execution of that documentary. Like people, like I've tried to make films. It's really, really hard. And like the editing, the audio, all of the details there. And so here we got you who is good at that shit. You know what I mean? And so I would love to, try to help you financially or however to do more of that, because you execute it so well. Well done.
Thank you so much. I just saw a great quote by Steve Martin, and he was giving advice in the acting world, I think, or comedy world. He's like, be so good they can't ignore you. And I obsessed over the details. I'm a detail-oriented person, so it's like it's a problem, but also like necessary if you want to be a good filmmaker. So it's actually like a benefit by filmmaking standards, but probably like OCD by common human standards. But I really appreciate you saying so. I worked really, really hard to bring it up to this level. It for me, it's filled with mistakes and problems, and I notice all of them. But I've removed as many of them as I possibly could, given what we shot and captured. But
it's like little things, like even when somebody's giving an interview and you like flip to other footage while they're talking. If an amateur does
the live performance in the old home video into the. Them playing it with the electric guitars, and it's good. It was smooth. It was perfect.
If an amateur does that, it looks stupid. But like you did that, and it looked like I could be watching a Netflix document. It could be like I could be watching something on a big screen, right? It was professional, well done, and
it holds
there's
people's
very
attention.
few people in the community, in the XJW community, that have the. I know maybe you're not the only one, but you are definitely. I mean, you may be the top of my list of somebody who can really execute that, and it's so important.
Thank you. I'm open to making another film on the topic. I would love to help other people do it, like consult and be a producer for someone else's project. But I need to, like, I think, decompress a little bit after 6 years. But I'm open. I think it would be fascinating because now, like, when I first crowdfunded this, it was like, who else is out there who wants to do this? Because, like, let's work together. And now it's like, okay, I feel like I know who all the human beings are that have these skills, and I'm learning more and more all the time, and being exposed to new and more like career professionals that are in the space who are also ex-witnesses. So like there's a guy who wrote Star Wars. I don't know if you saw Star Wars Clone Wars. I hope to have him on one day, but the entire first 2 seasons are his writing, and he infused Star Wars Clone Wars with XJW art, with XJW stories.
What?
He packaged it as Star Wars. It's actually Star Wars.
Maybe I'll watch
oh
Star
my God.
Wars.
We're taking over.
We all have to watch Star Wars Clone Wars.
I've never seen any of them.
Who would have thought Star Wars Clone Wars is XJW? It's total XJW animation. That's all it is.
Dragons. John Lennon was probably a Jehovah's Witness. At this rate.
Okay, guys. Let's Scott, we've kept you long enough. Thank you everybody for
it's great
listening.
to finally meet you, man.
Same.
I've been getting your emails for years.
Oh wow, cool.
But now I get the face with the names. So.
Yeah, reach out anytime. I'm happy to do this. I mean, this is now my new life. I need to be a guest on other people's shows because that is how I'm going to be doing marketing. So thank you for for offering and making it possible and fast. I'm happy to do it again anytime soon. Maybe every time there's a release, we can do one. Love to have you guys on my channel and do lives with you guys.
Anytime. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'll fix my internet connection. Okay. Everybody, Scott, you hang out for 1 sec, but we're going to say goodbye to the world. World, thanks. And we actually had a JW in the comments. I don't know.
I saw that.
Yeah, he or she was commenting. Thanks for popping
is this
in.
Satire or is this?
Oh, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
I don't know.
This is real.
Whatever. Thanks for popping in, JW.
Yeah, we love you. We don't bash you. We never even got on that topic.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, everybody. See you later. Shutting it down.
Peace.